Hello and welcome to the Doofcast, a film and TV podcast from Doof Media. My name is Scott Daly, and joining me, as always, he hates bananas. It's Mr. Matt Freeman. How's it going today, Matt?
That's right. I am a 6 foot tall orangutan who stands completely erect, and real doctors of zoology think that I'm
just a chimp.
Just a chimp.
Well, to be fair, did you see what the other adult chimp in the movie looked like?
I did. I did.
If all the chimps in this alternate universe look like that, then their confusion is completely understandable.
That mask looked like on the day of shooting, they were like, what do you mean we can't do this with a real adult chimpanzee?
This week on the show, Deconstructing Apes continues with Escape from the Planet of the Apes, the third film in the Apes franchise. It came out in 1971, and it is quite fun. I am so looking forward to chatting about this movie with you, Matt. I think, you asked, or you pondered, you questioned, you doubted at the beginning of this series why on earth we were doing this. And I think now, on movie number 3, you understand.
I do. I didn't realize that this was like a philosophical exploration of a series, right? Like this is a legitimate sci-fi series. It's not like it's the greatest thing ever, but it's got loads of stuff to talk about.
It's fascinating. It's absolutely fascinating. And the fact that they are churning these things out as quickly as possible, and yet they are all still saying something. They are all still unique from each other. They're trying to do different things while simultaneously staying in the same theme, I think is part of the reason why I'm so endlessly fascinated by all these movies.
Yeah, totally. I agree.
Yeah. So we'll get into it today. We'll get into Escape from the Planet of the Apes, and then we went to the theater, Matt. You and me, we went to the movie theater, and I'm so happy that we did this. So we could both go to the theater, so we could talk about a new movie. So we're ready to talk about M. Night Shyamalan's Trap. What? I'm sorry.
Oh, what? Damn it! Did we do this again?
Did we? Oh no. Yeah, so we went to the movies and we saw different movies. So we're going to talk about that briefly, and then we're going to chastise ourselves on the podcast for not communicating with each other a little bit better.
Yeah, that sounds good.
And that's the show. All right, Matt, let's get into it. Let's talk all about Escape from the Planet of the Apes. Matt, what is this movie all about?
The world is shocked by the appearance of 3 talking chimpanzees who arrived mysteriously in a U.S. spacecraft. They become the toast of society, but one man believes them to be a threat to the human race.
This movie, I'm sorry, just like this is such a ridiculous movie that even hearing the summary makes me laugh. This movie was written by Paul Den. It is directed by Don Taylor, and it stars once again Roddy McDowall and Kim Hunter as our 2 main apes. This movie, as we said, came out in 1971, a mere 15 months after the release of the second sequel that did well enough to warrant this. The budgets are dropping, though. This movie only cost $2.5 million to make, but it still made money. It made, I think, $12.5 million worldwide, which is plenty of money, and that's why the series continues to go on. This is one that once again changes things up a little bit here, Matt. We are gone from the future. We are in the present, as it was in the 1970s, and we got some apes that traveled back in time. What did you think of Escape from the Planet of the Apes?
So I don't think I'd ever seen this one before, and I enjoyed a lot about this movie. There will be a lot to talk about. It's sort of 2 or 3 movies. It starts out as a comedy in the vein of Trading Places or some other wacky hijinks comedy. There's some utterly ridiculous moments toward the beginning of the movie that are just very self-consciously comedic. And then the ending of the movie is basically Heat, where it's like utterly dire and just horrible and tragic and sad. And these 2 tones are both in this movie, and that blew my mind, and I loved it.
And the fact that it works, I think, is remarkable. because you're absolutely right. This is a movie in which there's jokes. There's so many jokes about them dressing up in human clothes and being and the people being fascinated by them, and then the movie ends with the two of them shot to death and a baby chimpanzee shot to death. Oh, but thank God it's not the smart chimpanzee, it's just another innocent chimp.
Right.
Thank the Lord. Fascinating
Yeah.
choice. What, like, so the thing we have to talk about, I think, first is that the second movie ended with the Earth blowing up. The whole Earth, it blew up.
Yeah.
And so that movie did well enough, and then they're like, we gotta make more of these because the movie did good. And then it's like, uh, what do we do though? I think the urban legend about this one, man, I don't know if it's true, but the producer of these films, Arthur P. Jacobs, after the second movie did well, sent a telegram to the writer of this film and the writer of many of the Apes films. Basically, just it was a telegram that said 4 words: "Apes exist. Sequel required." And so they had to figure out how they were going to make this movie. And essentially what they did was said, oh, remember those apes that you liked during the second movie? You don't see this, but actually another ape rebuilt one of their spacecrafts and they went up in space. But no, we can't show you that. Actually, you don't see it. It's just just trust us. It happened. And here they are.
I love it, actually. Like, because if you're going to do it, you might as well just skip to the part that we actually want to see. Right.
Yeah.
Like just have the ship. The movie really starts strong, actually. Like the ship lands, the ship falls in the ocean, and they bring it ashore, and the astronauts step out and they take off their helmets, and it's the apes. And immediately you're like, yes, because we're getting to the point, and also you're immediately tickled by the idea of like, oh, we're going to do like in the first movie, but it's going to be the opposite, where the apes are going to be the fish out of water characters, while Taylor was the fish out of water character in the first one. And that's going to allow us to maybe make some, it's going to feel similar, but we're going to make some different points, because instead of Taylor reacting to the ape society, it's going to be the apes reacting to our society. And they really, like, I think they do a good job of that, like exploring this part of the premise. It's fun, it's funny, it's lighthearted during that beginning part of the movie. I admire the chutzpah of just saying, okay, some of the apes survived. Obviously, we're going to have it be Zira and Cornelius.
And some other guy who we had never met before this point.
And some other guy, just to like have there be the thinnest of excuses of like, yeah, Cornelius and Zara wouldn't know how to fix a rocket. So this other guy does, though, for some reason. It's fine.
But we don't actually want him in the movie, so we're gonna kill him off as quickly as possible in a shockingly and actually kind of hilarious way, which is he just gets strangled to death by a gorilla, which is actually like a perfect like closing of an arc from the second movie, where the chimpanzees hated the violent animalistic gorillas of their society.
Yeah, no, I love it. I thought it was so hilarious when he gets strangled by the gorilla. Like the way it's shot is so funny, where he's like lecturing them, and then he gets too close to the wall and the gorilla grabs him, and just it's this hilarious sequence of shots that like smash cuts to just they're wheeling his body out on a stretcher, and it killed me. I loved it so much.
It's the Sam Jackson and Deep Blue Sea getting eaten by the shark of the 1970s. It's pretty perfect. I loved it.
Me too.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in agreement with you here. Like that opening sequence is so fun. Like you can kind of perhaps go back to 1971 in your mind and imagine what it would have been like to sit down and watch this movie. And maybe you hadn't seen the trailer, and like it starts with humans and a spaceship, and you're like, what's going on here? And then that wonderful moment of them taking off the space helmets and seeing their monkeys. It's perfectly set up. You're totally into it. You're totally bought in. You can see exactly where we're going. And maybe in some ways, I don't think you could see the comedy of it, which is actually delightful. I think it's a very funny movie, actually. The entire first like inquiry where they, go before that council for the first time, is very funny. It's
Mhm.
like, just like the idea of, we're gonna put them in this courtroom, and then we're gonna have them make like funny marriage jokes to each other, and everyone's just gonna fucking love it, and they're gonna fall in love with them. Like, that's a great funny idea for a movie.
Yeah. And it's very like earnest and kind of heartwarming too. Like it is funny, but
Yeah.
it's not that kind of sneering humor. It's like the Cornelius and Zira are these like lovable people. Like they're just these
Hmm.
great characters. They're very distinct characters across all three movies, really.
Yeah.
And you really empathize with them. I was surprised. I mean, I don't. Again, I don't think this is like a great film, but I was surprised
No.
at how emotionally invested I was, and uh, like how genuinely sad I was when I kind of realized what direction we were going toward the end. There was a point, this is full spoilers, I guess. So there's a point toward the end where I, figured out ahead of the movie that the Zero had swapped the baby,
Hmm.
and I was like, oh, so that like they have to die now, and then the baby
Yeah.
is going to stay in the circus, and that kind of like wraps everything up, and then we have our like closed time loop, which the movie doesn't actually like express to us that this is a closed time loop storyline, but it leaves enough hints for you to realize like, oh, so that's where
That's where this
the
all started.
that's where this all started. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Which is hilarious, because our antagonist of the film, Otto Hassline, who, by the way, I don't know if you remember this, in the first movie, when Taylor is talking into his computer, like leaving a message, the doctor he mentions, and the doctor's theory of time dilation and all that, is Dr. Otto Hassline. So they did
Uh,
try to be consistent there with some of the stuff they brought. And I think this doctor is also mentioned briefly by Brent in Beneath the Planet of the Apes as well. So this is the guy. This is kind of the guy. And we see him here, and he's the antagonist of the film. He's the one that kills our apes. Here's the fascinating thing about him, Matt. He's right. Like, he's just correct about everything, right?
I'm interesting, Scott. Interesting. Um,
No, I mean the fact. I mean, not saying he's like right to shoot a baby, but like his theory about like the downfall of humanity, the seed that is going to begin the rise of the apes and the downfall of humans, is caused by these two people and the child they're going to bear. Like,
yeah,
the movie basically says he's right about that by the way
yeah,
it ends.
yeah. You're right about that. I mean, it's okay. So that's true. He's like factually right. But then we have the other characters, one of whom is the actual president, which was kind of a
Yeah.
fun moment. Is that like the president and his science advisor are having this heady debate
Hmm.
where it's like, if that's if it is fated, if God wills that humanity fall and that apes rise, then so be it.
Hmm.
Um, and I don't remember. It's funny. I don't know what the movie actually says versus what I was just sort of like editorializing in my head while watching the movie. But maybe some element of like, well, who are we to interfere with the timeline? If this is, if we're just learning about the future, then who are we to try to change the future? It seems arrogant and hubristic to do that. And um, Hessline is doesn't buy that at all. He's just like,
Yeah.
no, we gotta stop this. This is a warning about what could happen, and I think we're meant to see him as the villain, obviously, right?
Yeah.
Despite the fact that he's trying to protect the human race, he goes about it in such a like cold and inhumane way, where he's like, we're going to torture the information out of the apes, and then we're going to
We're gonna get a
kill,
pregnant woman drunk so she can tell us stuff. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
and then we're going to kill their baby, and kill them if I can get away with it. It's like he's the means are very harsh, and
Yeah. let me be clear. I'm not saying that the actions he undertakes are good. I just like there's a line in the movie when he's like talking about like we're never gonna fucking clean up the pollution and we're never gonna do this. Like he's frustrated by the inaction of his species to fix their problems, right? Like he talks about the proliferation of nuclear weapons. He talks about pollution. He doesn't say climate change, but he's essentially saying climate change. He's talking about these great scientific problems that are presenting themselves in the world, and his frustration with the people in power's unwillingness to do anything about them. And I'm like, yeah, I kind of get that, because that is in essence the through line of all these movies is mankind kind of sucks. And not only are we inherently destructive and violent, but we can't seem to fix these problems ourselves either. Um, and I don't know, like I found that a really fascinating, interesting villain in that,
Yeah.
like, yes, he's the bad guy. Yes, we don't like the choices he chooses to make. And yes, I think the ultimate argument of the film is perhaps what you said, which is that like, so be it. If this is the way things are going to go, this is our time. If this is how we're going to drive to our own destruction, so be it. And I do think that's interesting, but I was fascinated by him as a bad guy.
Yeah. Well, I think it's funny. This might dovetail slightly with our 11/22/63 conversation, where everybody wants to kill baby Hitler. Nobody wants to raise baby Hitler to be a
Yeah.
good man.
Hmm.
And the analogy here is he caused the doom of humanity through his violence and aggression by
Yeah, yeah. No, that I mean
yeah,
that is the essential irony of it, right? In
right,
his efforts to stop this, now like we got two movies to go, right? We're gonna see where this goes from here. But yeah, the implication is the baby has survived now, and maybe we'll have a little bit of a chip on its shoulder,
yeah,
understandably, and we'll see where that goes.
right, right. Whereas if he had treated the apes with kindness and maybe like helped them start their own ape society, then there would never have been this dynamic of like the apes being enslaved and throwing off the shackles of slavery and the
Yeah.
humans having to you know, be destroyed. It could have just gone on a totally different track. But he didn't allow that.
Yeah, and it is I think part and parcel of this movie that, you know, his he sees this problem, and his method of solving the problem is, oh, we have to kill it, we got to shoot it.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
yeah, it's not, oh, let's see if we can just become better people to do the right thing. No, it's the violent action. It's shooting a baby, which
mhm,
again, like th- this is a movie in which there's a whole sequence where the characters go and go shopping and have like a shopping montage and get cool new clothes, and
uh-huh,
then 45 minutes later a baby is shot,
yeah,
and you're just like, whoa, how does this work at all? I mean, that's the remarkable thing to me, is that yeah, it is, there's such a big swing between these two poles of what this movie is. And I was pretty fascinated by how I wasn't completely off put by it. It felt like this natural and tragic move of, you know, people aren't sure what to do with them first, and then they're loved, and then that love turns into fear, and that fear definitely turns into destruction ultimately.
yeah. I don't know. I agree. I agree that the wild swing in tone. I feel like most movies that go for this, I would be just making fun of it, and I kind of did, because it's such a huge swing in tone. But it worked on me. Like I was riveted by this guy chasing them around this abandoned ship in this wonderful 70s directing style.
Mm-hmm.
And I just found it heartbreaking too, because we've known Cornelius and Zira for 3 movies, and they're like these peaceful scientists who are like they helped Taylor. they're they're just trying to survive, and this guy like literally murders them for being who they are.
Yeah.
It's
Mm-hmm.
like a racist murder, basically.
Yeah, that is a great point. I think that is important, because I do think this is, I think race has been, and racism and has been a metaphor in the films up to this point.
Hmm.
But I do think this is like the first one, perhaps because it's being set in modern day, that I think really brings that idea to the forefront. Because I do think racism is a big part of this movie.
Yeah. Yeah, but I'll go further in saying that the ending of the movie affected me because like it's very sad, the idea that Cornelius specifically, like of the two of them, Zira is more hot tempered. Cornelius is always the more peaceful of the two,
Yeah,
until like this movie ends. He hits the one guy with the tray, and he like feels horrible about it because he didn't
he
mean to kill
kills
the
him.
guy, and kills him, and
I
then
will say
yeah,
that was like the least believable sequence of events I've ever
it-
seen on
sure,
film. Like I was like, how did like it cuts back to him in the back of his head, looks like he got shot in the head or
right.
something. I'm like, what happened here?
Yeah, yeah, not a perfect movie, but it culminates in Cornelius being the one who shoots this guy,
Yeah,
which
yeah.
it feels like an out of character thing, but it's like, well, it's out of character because he's been driven to this extremity by watching his wife get shot in front of his eyes, and what he thinks is his baby get shot in front of his eyes,
Hmm.
and it's just horrible. Like because there's nothing in the movie that suggests to you that Cornelius knows about the baby swap, um, th-
Yeah,
as far as I can remember,
I don't think
um,
so. I don't think he does. And I
and
mean
yeah, like
that is it's horrible. It is. And I just the final image of this fun jovial movie is this slow zoom out from the corpses of two people as
yeah,
we fade to black, and then we swap over to the circus again to get that mama moment, which is also so sad. It's like not
yeah,
only is it the reveal that, oh, the baby Milo survived, but it's calling for its mama, and
yeah.
that's just like, man, fuck you for making me feel things, Apes movies. Why are you
Yeah.
doing this to me?
Yeah, I was gonna say that like right after that, which was already sad, it really got to me. Like again, ridiculous movie in many ways. A lot of
Hmm.
scenes that kind of don't work and seem very hacky, but the ending really landed for me. And I thought it was pretty remarkable. I'm surprised at how much I've been into these 3-8 movies that we've watched so far.
They're really good. I mean,
Yeah.
they are like just really good. I think this is usually considered like the best of the sequels,
Mhm.
for at least of these first five. I think the weakest is typically seen as the Beneath, the one we already talked about, and then this is the strongest. Not to say that anything bad about the next two we're going to be doing. The next one is the one I have the most distinct memories of. Uh, I'm really curious to see if like I can close my eyes and kind of see what that movie looks like and what it felt like the first time I watched it, and I'm really curious how that'll hold up when I get to it. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, like I will say the like we've been saying glowing things about what this movie is doing, and I think it does a really good job with what it's doing. But yeah, I mean, from a filmmaking perspective, this is not a great looking movie.
No.
You can definitely tell they've been slashing the budget each time. I feel like the ape makeup is getting worse every film.
Yeah.
Um, I actually read because I was really confused because I was like, why does Zira look so puffy? And I was like, is this because she's pregnant? Are they making her face look the mask look like puffier because she's pregnant? No, apparently what it was is the actress who played her was like freezing cold because they filmed this in December and the mask like had no insulation in it whatsoever. So they just like put stuff in it for her to keep her face a little bit warmer, and it just made the thing look puffier.
Huh.
So that's that.
That's funny.
Um, I feel like I didn't see any of their teeth this time around, of the human teeth, but I also feel like the snout moved the least realistic that it has
Yeah.
the entire time I've been watching these movies.
I was noticing that as well. It seemed like every once in a while they would make the mouth close all the way, sort of for form's sake, but most of the
Mhm.
time it was just kind of wiggling while
Kind
the
of wide open,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
I do think Roddy McDowall is back as Cornelius and does an excellent job in a role that he has to do a lot of heavy lifting. I'm so glad they brought him back for that and not the guy who did the walk that
yeah,
you mentioned in the second one.
yeah.
Really good
Hilarious.
performances from both of them. I- so like there's basically like a Cornelius and Zira surrogate characters,
Yeah,
from the first movie, like the two human doctors.
right.
I like they are the least memorable characters in this movie to me. Like I just
Uh-huh.
don't think the movie does a very good job with either of them. I don't know what you think.
No, I agree. I I totally agree with on both counts. They were supposed to mirror Cornelius and Zira, and then they are boring, and
Mm-hmm.
they don't really do anything. Like that's on the just sort of narrative level. Like what purpose do they really serve up until the point where it's time for them to escape, and then it's like, oh, good thing they have these good friends
Yeah.
who are just such good friends that they will help them escape despite the fact that the government is after them. It's like, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't the focus of the movie. It also didn't bother me that much, but I agree. I think the the 21st century like nitpicking asshole in me does have to point out that like this movie, the information in this movie is just radically inconsistent with the information that we learned in the first movie.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Where it's like in the first movie, the idea that humans used to be smart is like heresy
Mm-hmm.
and a secret. And in this movie, Cornelius is like, all right, here's what happened. The
Yeah.
dogs and the cats went extinct due to a virus, and humans took apes as pets and then trained the apes to do chores for them. And the apes got smarter as a consequence of this and resented being slaves. And that led to the downfall. And it's like none of this. this is completely at odds, and the fact that Cornelius would know this, it's just tossed in with like one line where he's like, well, as an anthropologist I have access to secret scrolls. So it's
Yeah.
that's the thing, is I don't care, and if anybody was going to know this information, I guess it would be Cornelius, but he shouldn't know this information, but I don't care also. So.
Yeah, I mean, I don't care very much, but I do wonder, like, was there a way to get to where they wanted to go, like the purpose of that information, without just having him kind of just exposition dump, this is what happened in your future? I don't think it's necessary ultimately. Like, it
Yeah.
does break canon, and I don't care about that, but it's also it just doesn't feel like a necessary sequence for me. Like, it feels like, oh, we have this idea, and I was like, okay, well, just put that idea in like the next movie. Don't just have someone talk about it in this movie.
Yeah.
And like, I think just the idea that they come from their future, that it's a world in which humans are dumb and apes can talk. It's a world that ends with this fireball of destruction, is enough to, I think, get all the characters in this movie to behave the way we need them to behave. I think that in and of itself is enough. We don't need this story, this ridiculous story about dogs and cats and pet apes. Yeah, you're so right. Like that
Mm-hmm.
that really stood out to me as like, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
Like, this just directly contradicts everything. Like the big reveal at the end of the first movie was that there's a baby that could say mama. And now we've just completely gone and said, no, we've actually known the entire time. I mean, I guess you could maybe argue that after that reveal, like, we made the argument in the first movie that Zaius clearly knew this, and he was one of the only ones that knew it. And Cornelius, since then, has perhaps just pilfered the secret scrolls himself. But yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know.
That's all possible. I think maybe a deeper rooted sort of eye roll for me is just the very idea itself that it's like such an uninteresting story. It's like cats and dogs, and then like what like the story, I need a term to refer to the older movies versus the newer movies. Is there a phrase for this? I'm not aware if there is, but the modern Apes movies, like that makes a lot more sense to me, where it's like there's a virus, there's a retrovirus that rewrites the chimp's DNA, and that is the explanation for why they get smarter with each generation. And the humans, I don't remember that. I know there's a virus that is killing the humans. I don't think it's making them dumber necessarily. I thought it was just killing them, but maybe I'm not remembering.
I'm pretty sure just most of humanity is wiped out.
Yeah.
In the present day Apes movies.
Yeah, I think that's it.
And yeah, no, I don't think they're dumb. At least through I haven't seen the fourth one, right? So at least through the first three, I don't think they had gotten to that fate, that state yet that we see in the original Ape movie. But yeah, I agree with you. I don't think we we need this. But I mean, we're doing it now, right? Like,
Mm.
I don't know if you know where the the story goes from here, but there's kind of only one place it can go at this point.
Yeah, I don't really. I mean, the funny. Okay, so here's the funny truth that I realized after thinking about this was like I thought I had seen several of these movies, and part of the reason was that I remembered the ending of the previous movie where the world is destroyed, and I was like, well, that must be like the last one because it ends with the world being destroyed.
Yeah.
And so I figured I must have seen several, but no, I just saw the first two, uh, and then I don't think I saw any of these other ones. So
Hmm.
yeah,
It's fun. It's fun. Yeah. Well, you got some fun stuff ahead of you. Then that's
great.
really cool. Yeah. Speaking of more like bad filmmaking, we talked about how emotional that final scene was for us, and it
Hmm.
was very emotional. But I mean, clearly, Matt,
Uh huh.
the ape, the little baby chimpanzee, the real baby chimpanzee's mouth moving
Uh huh.
is just them going backwards and forwards on the
Uh huh.
recording, like in the most sloppy, shitty way ever. Like that happens a lot in
Uh-huh.
movies, right? Sometimes they'll just play something backwards and forwards to extend the scene, but also, especially when working with animals, you want them to do a certain thing and you can't get them to do it. So you, but it's just like it was so crappily done. Like for a professional movie that was released in theaters, it looked awful.
Yeah, I think people had really low standards back then. It was funny. I mean, I think that's how much this movie was working on me. Is like I was still so heartbroken, even
Yeah.
though you're watching. Like the camera is actually like nudging up and down because they didn't even have the camera still when this
Hmm.
happened. So the
Yeah.
camera is floating up and down as they loop the film. It looks
Yeah.
awful. Yeah,
Yeah. And also like I understand it. I understand you cannot get an adult chimpanzee in the sequence, but the choice to have a real baby chimp with what is clearly just a person in a cheap mask and suit, just like the difference in those two looks really accentuates like the issue here, right? I
yeah,
also like I understand it's important for what they were doing to make the baby of two apes from the future just look exactly like a chimpanzee baby. Like that's a thing they just needed to happen for this whole plot to work. But it also again was another moment of weirdness when they bring the baby to her and it's just it's just a chimp. It looks nothing like you at all. It was a little wild.
yeah. Right. I think the movie almost wants us to believe that in the world of the movie you can't tell the difference between a
Yeah.
chimpanzee and Cornelius and Zira, because any person in the world who looks at who sees a 6 foot tall um you know person with human shoulder and hip and leg and arm
Yeah.
anatomy, except they have a chimp face, they're going to recognize that's not a normal chimpanzee. That's not any
Yeah.
kind of chimpanzee. Um, the head shape is even completely wrong too. Like
Hmm.
that's just not the way chimp heads look. So, but in the world of the movie, everybody's like, those are just chimps. They're wearing
Yeah.
clothes. That's weird. Um,
Isn't it silly that they're clearly trained to play with blocks?
yeah,
Yeah, I think you're right. Ultimately, I think that's true. And the thing that is a little disappointing about that for me is like I always felt like the apes in the first movie. The point was they look the way they look because they're supposed to be like evolved chimpanzees, right?
right.
They are not just supposed to be chimpanzees that can talk and are smart. They're supposed to be the result of evolution on chimpanzees for thousands of years that made them more humanoid. That were just like these are upright, walking humanoid chimps,
Yeah,
essentially.
right.
And basically with this movie, we basically said, nah, actually, you're supposed to be just getting rid of your disbelief and just saying, no, these are just chimps, actually. And I don't know. That's just it makes it a little less cool to me.
Yeah, right. I kind of agree because they're like a different species, right?
Hmm.
I mean, the way I see them is they're not, you know, if a biologist were to classify them, they wouldn't just say like, oh, these are chimpanzees. They would say these are, you know, some other species name, because they're clearly
Mhm.
dramatically different. The movie
Yeah.
goes out of its way. I think it's important to the movie's, you know, narrative functioning that they actually be pretty much just chimpanzees, because they can breed with chimpanzees. That's like
Yeah, that the
crucial,
threat here has to be that one of these, the offspring of two of these future apes, could successfully breed with a modern day chimp,
right?
which
Yeah.
uh I don't know, you're the scientist, Matt. If you take an animal that has evolved over the course of 2000 years, are they still close enough to their origin point that they could successfully breed with
Well,
them?
if it were real evolution and the amount of evolution that can happen in 2000 years actually, then yeah, they almost certainly could, because that just you wouldn't see any difference between the two,
Mhm.
unless it were just some, you know, really extreme evolutionary pressure, which I guess we're positing that's what happened.
Sure.
I don't like. There's no actual rules here though, because like you look at dogs, like we've done unholy things to dogs, and only probably, I mean, there's breeds of dog, there's whole breeds of dog that didn't exist like 200 years ago, and they look,
Yeah.
you know, very distinctive and different in all kinds of ways. So if you're very intentional about it, but that's not the same thing as I think what we're talking about here, you know, okay, so I do think it's stupid and I don't like it at all, but the one thing that I think they were going for was like, well, Taylor comes to the future and there's just humans, but they're dumb, and the apes go to the past and they're just apes, but they're dumb, right? So it's like
Mhm.
Taylor could breed with those humans, the apes can breed with these apes. It's so there's like a symmetry that I think they're going for. It's just
Sure.
like we kind of said a minute ago, it's totally inconsistent, and if you think about it for 5 seconds, it'll not make any sense.
But it works. It functions, and that's the important thing. And it's because of that symmetry. I think it is funny that we talked about the first sequel of this, basically for half the movie was just a retelling of the first movie, and then it shifted into something very, very different and weird and kind of wonderful. And then this movie is not a retelling of the first movie, but an inverse of the first movie, and then from there kind of shifts into something weird and wonderful and different. Um, I love that about it, but
Yeah.
it seems like that's what they're consciously going for.
Yeah, I think the tone, the the uh the whiplash I experienced was basically like, oh, okay, starting the movie, oh, okay, they decided to just go full comedy with this movie,
Yeah.
and and then the ending of the movie, like, and by the ending I really mean like the last half, is like, oh wait, this is just the tone of the previous two movies, where it's all very serious and philosophical and life or death stakes,
Hmm.
and you know, main characters dying right and left. Like that may be one of my favorite things about the Planet of the Apes movies, is that they just kill main characters constantly. They just love
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
um
Every protagonist in these movies has not lived.
yeah, yeah,
Everyone.
yeah. Again, reminds me of the sci-fi that comes from
Yeah.
the earlier part of the 20th century, where it's just very um cynical. I don't know if cynical is quite the right word, but like a lot of this, you know, Ray Bradbury I think is a good example, because
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking about the Martian Chronicles today, and how like every Martian Chronicles story is like, and then something horrible happened, and the astronaut died, or in some horrible way. That's it's a very Ray Bradbury like mentality, and presumably a lot of other authors. I admit that I'm over sampled on Ray Bradbury, because I read a bunch of Ray Bradbury's short stories when I was younger.
Mm-hmm.
Um, this feels kind of Ray Bradbury though, you know, like the
Yeah.
Martian
Yeah.
Chronicles. I think maybe there's a reason why the Martian Chronicles comes to mind, because the Martian Chronicles is about humans who come to Earth. No, humans who come to Mars, and the Martians who live on Mars. th- I don't want to overstate the similarities, but I think one could, if one wanted, draw some lines between the Martians in the Martian Chronicles and the apes in the Apes movies.
Hmm.
There's even some sort of like time uh, uh, mushiness in those books, where at various points it's implied that time travel is possible. I don't think Bradbury is ever really going for something consistent. I actually do not think that his Martian Chronicles short story collection is like an attempt to tell one complete and consistent story about humanity's trip to Mars. It's just a bunch of different short stories, but I do think there are some lines here. I'm literally just thinking about this now for the first time, so maybe next time we talk, I will have thought more about this and I'll have more to say about Martian Chronicles.
Sure. No, I think you're right though that we said in the first movie that this felt Star Trek, and it's not that it's lost that feeling, but it is very unique as this kind of epic science fiction. We mean that in the most literal possible way, and the science and the fiction, like this is doing things that all the classic sci-fi does in ways that are frankly surprising. Like it's just you don't that's another reason why I wanted to do this, Matt, because you just don't think about these movies that way when you like look back at them, having not watched them in a while. Like when you think about Planet of the Apes, you think about the Statue of Liberty, you think about this the Simpsons episode. Like you don't think about like, oh, these are actually like very intelligent science fiction explorations of race and humanity and these deep conversations about what it means to be a person and what are we, who are we, like
Yeah.
it's great. It's fucking great.
Yeah. It just forcing you to think about these things.
Mm-hmm.
One moment I liked that it was kind of a comedy moment, but it's also kind of a serious moment, is when they're watching the apes get dressed, and the one of the guys is like, "Oh, they're pretending to get dressed,"
Mm-hmm.
or something like that, and one of the other guys is like, "No, they actually got dressed." Like, but it's just a fun sort of way of it's like it's a again, it's funny, but it's also like sort of a philosophical language game where it's like, can one pretend to get dressed and also actually get dressed, or do you have to have the intent and the knowledge that you're getting dressed in order to get dressed, or can you
Mm-hmm.
train a dog to get dressed in such a way that it's just pretending to get dressed? Like I don't know the answer. It seems like one of those like riddles that one could ponder. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. I also really like looking at the difference between the first words spoken by a human in the first movie, which are, the get your damn paws out, you get your paws out, me, you damn dirty ape, to what is the first word an ape says aloud in this movie, which is because I don't like bananas, right? Yeah. I think that's a great, we've talked about how these two movies are kind of inverses of each other in a lot of ways. And this is, these apes are pacifists, right? They're pacifists that enter this story as peaceful people who she wasn't even yelling. She was just like, because I don't like bananas. You're assuming I like bananas. I don't like bananas. And by the end of the movie, they've turned violent, as you said. They kill people and are killed. Whereas I feel like Taylor entered the first movie as a violent kind of monster, and maybe this is a stretch, but was kind of pacified by the film a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, at least by the first film. I mean, he
you can't bring the second into that at all, for sure.
Yeah, I think especially his friendship with Cornelius and Zira does kind of soften his approach toward the apes. I mean, he starts out very antagonistic toward them, and it's kind of a horror movie for the first half of the movie, but he leaves, wishing them well. He gives Zira a kiss, so clearly he's come around on them specifically. So I think you're right.
Yeah, it's great. It's great stuff. I feel like we haven't been going that long, but anything else you wanted to say? This is just like a fun, weird, not great movie that I really enjoyed.
Yeah, I think not. I mean, most of what it's doing is enjoyable, lighthearted stuff, and then the ending is very heavy, but weirdly works on me, surprisingly well. And I'm glad we watched it. Yeah, really enjoying this series so far.
Can I just say, only in the 1970s would you have a character go through the painter painting a picture of the painter painting a picture of the painter. It seems like 5 minutes long.
Yeah.
And I'm like, man, you're really just going through all of it, huh?
And that was the Haslane doing that, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, okay, we're establishing that he's a blowhard who I'm supposed to hate. But yeah, that took forever. I don't even
Mhm.
think I don't even know what the point of that was,
It
by
doesn't
the
seem to have
way.
anything to do with like the causal loops that he's talking about, right? Like I
Right.
don't yeah, I did not get it. I
I,
did not get it.
it's almost like what the writer was trying to do was sort of put into our head the idea of a closed, self-consistent timeline, which is what this story is,
Mhm.
or is trying to be, uh, without actually saying it. But I don't think they're successful at doing that. So
Is that like a thing, that analogy he's making there? Is that like a common analogy for something, or was that just made up whole cloth for this movie?
I don't know. I don't know. I vaguely feel like I've heard it before, but I can't. I would not say it's common. No, I would not say it's like a
Okay.
common analogy.
Yeah. Because my other theory was that like the writer just like read this in a book before he started writing this
Uh-huh.
movie, and he was like, "Oh, that's neat. I'm gonna work this in somehow."
Yeah, yeah. I think that's one flaw with certain aspects of the movie is it in some places I think it's trying to be smarter than the writer actually is, and
Mm-hmm.
so it doesn't quite work. But
I mean, but that's been true from the beginning of these movies, right? Where
yeah,
like they clearly establish how like time at light speed works, and then they essentially contradict themselves within the movie by
uh,
being weirdly inconsistent with how all that stuff actually works.
yeah. Yeah, that's the funny thing. I'm just gonna grade it on a curve and say in the '70s, people had no expectation that the sci-fi content of their movies was going to be accurate in
Mm-hmm.
any way, or even internally consistent, and thus the filmmakers didn't feel like they needed to try that hard. So
Better
yeah,
days. Better days.
yeah, yeah, seriously. But how does the hyperdrive work, Scott?
Who cares?
Uh,
Who
How
cares?
dare you? Yeah, yeah.
All right, that is Escape from the Planet of the Apes. Next up on the list, Matt, we have Conquest for the Planet of the Apes.
Can't
Do
wait.
you think by the end of this, we're going to be able to keep all 10 of them straight in our head as far as the naming convention and what order they came in?
I mean, I think I'm doing good so far. I would have no trouble distinguishing the first three. So
Yeah, it's only going to get more complicated, Matt.
that's
Better be ready.
true. That's true. It's the new ones that are the killers, though.
We said
Where
this already, but yeah, the rise and dawn of it all is certainly was a decision.
I agree.
All right, so we will be covering that Apes film next week.
Do 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 doof.
Okay, Matt. We can't talk about these movies too much because we can't spoil them for each other.
Yeah.
But I did just since they're like both of these movies of the new hotness. Everyone's talking about them. Okay, not really. Everyone's talking about your movie. Nobody's talking about my movie. But I did want to briefly talk about our experiences with the movies we saw over the past weekend. So you want to go first and talk to me about Logan or Wolverine and Deadpool and Wolverine, or Wolverine and
I
Deadpool? I
think
don't
it's
remember.
Deadpool and Wolverine.
Okay.
Um, yeah. So I'm going to be probably going to disappoint a lot of people actually, because I get the feeling like most everybody I've talked to has really loved this movie, or at least liked it a lot. And my experience was basically like while I was in the theater, I was like often smiling and laughing. And like it is a funny movie. It's
Mm-hmm.
successfully funny. I'm not saying I didn't enjoy it, but and it's got some really good performances, particularly by Hugh Jackman. I think that this is possibly the best Wolverine that Hugh Jackman has done, including Logan. And I say that because he's actually playing Wolverine instead of playing Hero Man. Um,
Okay.
and but all that being said, like you walk out of the theater and you kind of just feel like the constant like undermining of its own internal reality and turning everything into a joke. It's like 10 times worse than in any other Marvel movie, which, the recent Marvel movies already have a reputation for undercutting their own tone
Mm-hmm.
with a quip. And this is just, it doesn't even let the tone be established in the first place. It's just, it's more like for every 10 undercuttings of the tone, there's like one thing they do that kind of tries to be poignant, and none of the poignancy worked on me, and they tried to make it poignant in various places, and I was just like, no, that's not working on me at all. And I don't know, this maybe this feels, maybe this is sounding terribly negative when it's really just like, I thought the movie was funny and I walked out of the theater and I didn't think about it anymore until I saw people talking about it. And then and I'm glad people are liking it. I'm not saying anybody's wrong to like the movie, but I think I'm just tired of this thing that we're doing with constant wink, wink, nudge, nudge at the audience to the extent that I'm just like, fine, if you refuse to make a movie that I can actually become involved in and take seriously, then I don't know how to connect with this emotionally. Like it's resisting being connected with emotionally.
This is the only MCU movie that is coming out this year, right?
Yeah.
They have a bunch coming out next year, though. It's doing very well. So, there were people decrying the death of the MCU, but this movie's doing very, very well. So, that's not happening. But after walking out of this movie, what is your interest level with this next phase of the Marvel Cinematic Universe?
I mean, it hasn't changed really, because and the thing is, this movie doesn't give you any sense of like reinvigoration for the MCU per se. Like, it's just, okay, that was a good movie. It was tighter in many ways. Like it was less boring and more fun. I'll say that much for it, than many of the recent movies have been. And it's like, well, if they're going to make all the movies this tightly, then at least they're going to be really entertaining, and that's good. But I'm just not. I don't find anything compelling in terms of like a dramatic experience.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of why I did not go see this movie last weekend. I should have, if I knew you were going to see it, but we didn't talk to each other until our plans were too late to change. But I want to see this movie eventually. I've enjoyed the first two Deadpool films quite a bit, actually. And so I was just like, oh, I'll probably like this one too. And I probably will. But yeah, like my investment in not only this movie, but this type of movie has never been lower ever. And I know we've talked about this on the podcast before, so I don't want to repeat this. It's been too long repeating this again, but it is pretty remarkable just how immediately after the end of Endgame, like how just right away I stopped caring about any of this, at all. Like, I was pretty into this stuff leading up to Endgame. I was very excited about the next film in the Marvel universe.
Yeah,
and
me too.
I was into the story. I was into the individual stories and the overarching stories. I think the last two Avengers movies were good movies that I really enjoyed, that emotionally affected me, that did all the things you want a big summer blockbuster film to do to you. And then it ended, and I was just like, okay, I'm pretty much done now. I saw the Spider-Man one because it had my Spider-Man growing up in it, right? And I've seen other ones, and man, it's weird. It's weird how quickly that happened. And I think that happened for a lot of people too. I don't think this is an isolated incident.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think you're right that you'll enjoy this too. Like when you inevitably watch this movie, you'll like it. You'll probably think I was being too harsh on it. It's just like the thing I come to the MCU for, the thing I come to movies for is generally like to feel something. And this movie didn't succeed at that, and it did try to. Like, that's what I'm trying to kind of emphasize, is if it had, I almost would have liked it more if it had just been a stupid comedy, full stop, instead of trying and failing to make me feel something.
Yeah, I mean, I did think the first two did have like emotional beats and moments in it. Like I remember, and it's been a while since I've seen them, but I remember those movies having moments that did affect me. That it was trying to do something beyond just the dumb, funny jokes, which it was definitely a lot of that. But So yeah, I kind of expected this movie to be in that similar vein, where it was gonna be a lot of funny jokes. It was gonna try to do something profound and meaningful and interesting at the same time.
I thought the other two movies were more successful at that, to be honest.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
that's good to know.
The other final thing, while I'm just making everyone mad at me, I guess, is like I actually didn't think it was as funny as the other two movies either, because
Interesting.
most of the jokes are not jokes. Like they're either, wow, that's wacky, that's crazy, which is not a joke, or they're, I recognize that, which is also not a joke.
Mm-hmm.
The jokes they do have are pretty funny, but there are fewer of them, and there are more of those other two things that I just described that are not actually funny. And maybe you even smile. Maybe I'm even in the theater smiling. It's that guy. But that I'm never going to laugh at that ever again.
Yeah.
Past the first time I saw the movie, right?
Yeah.
Because it's not a joke.
It's hollow and empty and meaningless. It's just, I recognize that. Yeah.
Yeah. Or stuff that's just ridiculous. Like you're like, there's a reaction of like, it's so ridiculous that they did that. And then that immediately wears off and you're just like, yeah, that's happening on the screen now. And now I'm kind of bored actually. So
gotcha. Yeah.
All right. That's all I got.
All right, that is Deadpool and Wolverine, the #1 film of the summer, and Matt thinks it's trash. So send your hate mail to matt@doofmedia.com.
Yeah. Leave a YouTube comment on a different video for a different channel, and I'll find it. Don't worry.
That's okay, folks, because you know what 2024's hottest movie is?
It's
Trap, baby.
Tell me all about it.
Well, I can't tell you all about it, but I can tell you that it's a damn good time at the movies. That's what I can tell you. You know, nobody's doing it like M. Night Shyamalan's doing it, man. Obviously everyone that's been listening to this podcast for long enough knows that this guy's like my favorite director. I love him. Even his least successful films like Lady in the Water are movies that I have a lot of affection for. And I love what his career, this resurgence in his career, this resurgence in popularity post The Visit has become. And I love what he settled into with these movies, where he just writes a movie, he spends like $30 million on it, and so it's basically guaranteed to get its money back just based off his name alone. And he's having a fun fucking time. He's having such a good time. This movie is hilarious. It's really funny. It's really weird. Everyone talks about Shyamalan's like weird dialogue, and that's in here. But of course, what I always say is like, he's doing that on purpose. He's having characters talk like that on purpose, and it fits perfectly in this movie. I don't want to spoil anything for you, but Josh Hartnett is incredible in this movie. And like Escape from the Planet of the Apes, Matt, on top of being funny, this movie's doing something very, very interesting. It's saying something really, really interesting. I don't want to get into it too far, but the concept of the film is that a serial killer is taking his daughter to a concert and learns that the concert has been created just as a trap to trap him, because they somehow know he's going to be there. And the concert is a woman named Lady Raven, who is played by M. Night Shyamalan's daughter, who also wrote all the music for Lady Raven. And it's a really fascinating thing, Matt. It's she's not an actress; she's a singer-songwriter. And the movie actually surprisingly requests a lot from her as a performer. And I think a better actor could have done a better job in that role. But also the fact that it is his daughter becomes like incredibly key and important to what this movie is exploring and what it's doing. And it's just delightful. Like, is it a perfect movie? No, of course not. Does it require a lot of suspension of disbelief? Do characters behave like human beings sometimes? No, they do not. But I guarantee you will have a fun time with this movie. Absolutely guarantee it.
Great. Well, next weekend you watch Deadpool, I'll watch this movie, and we'll
okay. I'm going to go ahead and say that the likelihood of me getting back to the theater and seeing Deadpool is pretty low. But yes, please go see Trap. I would love to have a deep philosophical conversation about this film with you, because I think it is, we spent so much time talking about M. Night Shyamalan as a director and a person. And I think this is another really fascinating window into, who he is and the type of things he thinks about and the type of things he struggles with and wrestles with. And man, like, it's a movie that I had a good time, and then I just didn't stop thinking about it since I left the theater.
Awesome.
So,
well, I definitely want to see it.
Yeah, Trap, folks, go see Trap. It's good. You will enjoy it. Josh Hartnett, man, he's so back. Josh Hartnett.
I love it. I love this new dad mode, Josh Hartnett.
I know, like, he shows up in a freaking Christopher Nolan movie. He was in what is the name of that film? Oppenheimer. He was in Oppenheimer, and he was good in it, and then suddenly he's in this movie and he's good in it. It's great. It's great.
Yeah, I always thought he was pretty good. Yeah.
Did you know there's like a rumor out there that Nolan offered him Batman and he said no because he didn't want to get into all that comic book stuff, and then he saw the first Batman film and he was like, oh fuck, I should have done that.
I did not hear that.
Apparently he was also offered Superman when they were doing when they were planning on building a series off of, I think, Superman Returns, the one played by Brandon Routh. They were going to build, and they wanted him for that too, and he said no to that too. Really interesting career Josh Hartnett had.
Well, he dodged a bullet with Superman Returns, but
true. But maybe if it was him, it would have been a huge successful franchise.
Maybe so.
Man, I got to see Hartnett with some more stuff. This is great. So yeah, that is Trap. Really, really, really strongly urge you to go see it. I think just, I don't want to say turn your brain off, because I think this movie requires a lot to think about. But what I would say is don't let yourself get swept into like the plot hole of it all. I don't approach this movie this way.
Yeah, I certainly don't have that problem, but it's a good.
Yeah, I that was more to our listeners and less to you. I'm not worried about you at all.
All right, great. I'm too stupid to notice a plot hole if it fell in my lap. That's
not what I meant. I meant you were a savvy, understands what Shyamalan is doing type of film goer.
Yes, I'm open to the thing that he's doing, and if you're not open to the thing that he's doing, then you're just setting yourself up for a bad time.
Yeah. Also, man, like, this guy can fucking film shit, man. This was filmed on film. He does a lot of really interesting things with, like, people compared him to Steven Spielberg. That was the big thing, right? This is the new Spielberg after The Sixth Sense. This man is Alfred fucking Hitchcock. That's who he is. Yeah. Not just the fact that he cameos himself in all his movies, but the things that he's interested in with how he holds the camera, how he lights the scene, how, like, all this stuff. He's Alfred fucking Hitchcock. And I mean that in the nicest way possible. It's
awesome.
Incredible. Yeah.
Cool.
That's Trap. Go see it, please. Everybody. But especially Matt.
I'm gonna.
All right, folks, that is going to do it for us this week. If you have any opinions on Escape from the Planet on the Apes, if you want to let Matt know how wrong he is about Deadpool and Wolverine, or if you just want to talk to me about Trap, because I would love to talk to you about Trap, please reach out to us. You can reach us via email at doofmedia@gmail.com, on Twitter @doofmedia, or over on our subreddit r/doofmedia.
Yeah, and if you're not subscribed to the Doofcast, we encourage you to subscribe and ensure you never miss an episode. You can find us on iTunes, YouTube, and pretty much anywhere else podcasts can be found.
And you, if you like what we do here, and you want to support us, consider becoming a patron of Doof Media. Head on over to patreon.com/Doof Media and pledge at any of the available levels for a bunch of bonus content, the ability to participate in our canon voting process, the ability to help pick us books for book club, and of course, bonus podcasts that we release once a month. We are right in the middle of Castle Rock, the Hulu original series, the second season of which we just released an episode for 2 days ago. So you can check that out and check out all of the other various bonus podcasts we've done. It's a great deal. Please do. And also, hey, go check out our merch. Go to doofmedia.myshopify.com. We got some merch there. We got some Doofcast related merch there, don't we?
Yeah, we got all kinds of stuff. We got some Doofcast, we got Doof Media, we got all the other shows. Well, one of the other shows anyway.
We're working on it. It's
yeah.
a work in progress. Yeah.
Yeah.
But if you ever wanted to be walking down the street and have someone go, "Hey, what does doof mean?" Now you can. Just get it on a hoodie.
I want that to happen all the time. Yeah, also please consider giving us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. Each review helps us get more exposure and introduces new people to the content that we make here.
All right, folks, next week, Conquest for the Planet of the Apes. Unless Matt sees Trap, in which case we'll be talking about that.
Sounds good.
We'll see you next week.
My name is Doof, and you'll do what I say. My name is Doof, and you'll do what I say.